Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So a couple of days ago, I saw a video online of a couple that was traveling through Colombia and they got robbed. And I think after seeing it, the reaction I got from it was quite intense. And I was reading some of the comments that were about this video, and there was a mixed reaction to it. There was people that were angry. There were people who were defending the boyfriend. Some were shocked. But I noticed that for me as a Gen X man, right, it kind of hit me a different way, and it brought up a lot of questions for me, right, and a lot of strong feelings. I was trying to, I guess, explain it. And I want to show you the video clip. It's only a minute long, and this video kind of got the conversation going in my mind to do this video today. And I want you to react to it when you're watching it, and because my reaction was quite immediate. Not only was I shocked, I was by the robbery itself, but I mean, maybe I'm not, because you see it so many times on the news now. But I was really shocked that the boyfriend, ran away when the girlfriend was being robbed, and screaming for help. So that point of the video, it really bothered me a lot. And I started to ask myself, why was it bothering me so much? Because I don't think a lot of the reaction of any Gen X man would be out of the ordinary. I think in fact, it brought back a lot of feelings on the values that we were raised on back in the 80s. That those values of, responsibility, protecting others in need. And these were taught by our elders, or the adult males in our life at that time, to always come to the aid of others when bad things happen, especially when, someone you care about is in danger. So I thought about the incident, and I started to ask myself the question, did we lose this as a culture in society today? And as, something that was normal, for a lot of us that grew up in the 70s and 80s.
Okay, what are you doing?
I'm sorry. I used to be much stronger.
So I'm going to show you the clip right now, and let's have a look at it. So as you can see here, the robber comes in and he goes after the female, and the boyfriend is standing in the left corner, and he's not doing anything about it. So these bystanders start coming in, these strangers coming in to help aid the lady, and of course they subdue the attacker and, give him a little bit of, feed him a little bit of justice, and the incident is diffused. And the boyfriend's nowhere to be seen, but now he appears around the corner and to check if she's okay. And that was the end of the story. So the question comes down to now is, are men, today still wired to protect others when in need? And obviously from this video, the answer is still yes, right? Because I think a lot of people nowadays, they think the men these days are soft, right? But this video proves that there are men out there that are still ready to jump in to help when others are in need. And these three men that are in the video are a prime example of that. And I'm not going to rag on the boyfriend. I don't know what his state of mind at the time was. Maybe he went through an extreme adrenaline dump of fear, and couldn't react. I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for him. But I do believe that he still has the instinct to protect as well, but probably wasn't cultivated in him at a young age. And so my question is, are we seeing a decline in this to help others in need in society today? Because back in the 80s, the culture was reinforced in Gen X men like myself, because we had male role models, our fathers or uncles, there's a lot of them were just tough people, right? And also, the pop culture, the movie culture, we had movies like Rambo, we had Bruce Willis, Chuck Norris, male heroes that saved the day in the movies, right? And, the 80s, the culture in the movies, they always, taught us to not turn a blind eye when someone was in need. I mean, I grew up on Bruce Lee movies, so a lot of his themes are about that, right? Helping the less fortunate and people in need.
Now, you get out of here. I'm warning you. You bastards can't push us around. You want to fight? I'll take you on.
And I think this was, a big part of how we were raised and taught about these values, right? I'll be a prime example. I don't know if you guys remember back in the 80s, that serial killer, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, right? And I watched a documentary not that long ago, and he was wanted, and he got off a bus in a neighborhood not knowing that the police had released his photo in the news and in the newspapers. And the whole neighborhood saw the photo and recognized them. And everyone came out of their houses, the aunties, the uncles, the fathers, everyone, and chased this Richard Ramirez down the street and beat it on him before the police came. Luckily, the police came, because I think Richard Ramirez would have been ripped to shreds, right? But it just shows you the sense of the community that we raised on back in the 80s. And so today, to me, as a person that's in the 50s now, I'm seeing this sense of duty being eroded away, and people on smartphones filming someone getting beaten up just for clicks, and people standing around not doing anything when people are in trouble, right? And back in the 80s, this stuff never happened, right? People were always jumping to help, and there was this sense of social responsibility that was ingrained in us as Gen X men. And I think a big reason for this, and I was trying to think about it. I was trying to think like why did this, what's causing this erosion, right? And looking back at it, back in the 80s, the communities were a lot tighter. The neighbors knew one another. They talked to one another. They stepped in when problems arose in the neighborhood. The kids rode their bikes everywhere. That's what they spent their time doing, just talking, connecting, hanging out. And it was a common sight to see neighbors just, talking to each other over the fence, right? So this I believe built a sense of, I guess, connection to one another. And when you're connected as a community, you also felt a sense of responsibility to look out for one another. And I remember when I was a kid, my father just seemed to know where I was a lot of times. And, there's a time before cell phones and everything, and when I used to come home, he used to say, hey, yeah, the pizza owner around the street, he always sees you, right? He knows where, he knows where you are and stuff like this. And I used to think to myself, like, man, that's annoying, right? Why's that guy mind his own business? But I think during that time it was common because even though the pizza owner wasn't my relative, he felt the responsibility to make sure that I wasn't getting in trouble and, report to my dad, right? But, nowadays people don't talk anymore. Neighbors, they just drive home, open up the garage door, drive their car in. You don't see them for weeks on end, right? And I think they just go home and just spend time on their iPhone, watch Netflix, and they don't really communicate with anybody outside of their social circle. And I think, back in the 80s, what I loved about it, it certainly made me a lot more accountable, because if I was out of line during those times, I mean, it was uncommon for another parent to correct you or sort you out, But nowadays, you do that, and they'll tell you to mind your own business, right? And my dad would used to say to the parent who sorted me out, would just say, "Good. If he doesn't behave, just slap him in the head," right? I mean, that's the way it was back then. And looking back at it now, it really developed my instincts, right? My instincts to be responsible, to help others. And this was brought out actually in me back in 2015, because I was just finishing teaching a class at my school, and I was walking out for lunch with my students, and we heard this scream across the street, and it was a busy intersection, and this lady was being carjacked. I found out later that the guy that was carjacking him just got out of jail. So we ran over there right away. I made sure that I kept I looked at his hands to make sure he didn't have a weapon in him before we threw him out of the car. And I put him in a wrist lock to subdue him till the officers got there. What was shocking about the whole thing, what was disturbing about the whole thing, was not the incident that happened, right? What's shocking was when I subdued the attacker, the people, the men who were closer, did nothing. They weren't doing anything when she was screaming. It was when I subdued the attacker that they were screaming at me, trying to instruct me to not hurt the attacker, right? And I told them to back away, that I was the instructor across the street, and we're going to wait for the cops to get there, right? But it's interesting how, they were there to comment and try to give me directions and instructions when, they were close by and could have done something, and they didn't. And here I had the lady that was being assaulted. She was sitting on the curb crying and screaming, and luckily a lady was there to assist her. But it's things like that stay with me even to this day, 11 years later. So I want to make a point that this video is not to say that one generation is better than the other, or this boyfriend in the video was a bad person. But the video is that I made today was probably more or less to discuss how we can bring those old school values back from the 80s and pass them on to the next generation, so that they can develop those same instincts as us Gen Xers, us Gen X men, which is the duty to protect, right? Because right now, I think it's lost in society today, right? Somewhat. I mean, for example, I was walking up the escalator at a mall not too long ago, and I saw a lady walking, an elderly lady. She was probably late 70s, and she had this bag, and she was kind of hanging on the railing and struggling to get down the stairs. So I came up to her and I said, "Hey, excuse me, ma'am, do you need any help?" And she says, "No, I'm okay, right? I'm okay." So when we got to the bottom, another gentleman, he was probably about maybe early 30s. And he came up to me and says, good for you for coming up to help her. And I kind of thought that was strange because, I just thought to myself, well, isn't that normal? Isn't that what everyone should do? Right? So maybe question like, are those, like I said, are these values being, lost today? Right? So I want to leave you guys with a couple of questions, and that is, how did you feel after watching that clip? And secondly, do you feel that society now is so disconnected that things like protecting one another, which us Gen X men normally see as normal, is now ignored? So feel free to comment below. And if you like my content and video, please feel free to like, share, or subscribe. And feel free to check out my next video. All right, take care, and I'll see you next time.